What if the story of civilization does not begin where we think it does? What if the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates was not the first chapter at all, but a page torn from a much older book? The desert holds its silence as the sun sinks toward the horizon. Wind sweeps across abandoned ziggurats, tracing the outlines of walls that once reached for the heavens. Fragments of tablets lie buried in the dust, carrying the echoes of kings who declared themselves chosen by gods here. We are told, humanity first built cities, first learned to write, first bent the chaos of nature into law and order. But beneath this accepted story lingers a question. Why does it begin so suddenly? Why do complex cities, temples, and writing appear with such startling completeness? As though inherited rather than invented civilizations are remembered by their ruins, by the bricks they laid and the words they carved, yet the deepest beginnings may not leave such traces. No stone, no writing, only shadows beneath the soil and whispers hidden in our DNA. If Sumer was not the dawn, but a continuation, then what came before? Did entire peoples rise and vanish, swallowed by oceans, crushed by ice? Or remembered only in myth, the cradle of civilization may be a mirage, the visible tip of something far greater, older. And forgotten, the mystery is not simply where history began. The mystery is whether we are only remembering the survivors. The land between the rivers lay buried in silence for centuries. What had once been the beating heart of ancient cities became fields of dust and mud brick ruins. Villages rose and fell over forgotten foundations. Nomads passed with little more than a glance at the strange mounds rising from the earth. The world forgot that beneath those hills, beneath the layers of sand and clay, the story of civilization itself was sleeping. It was the 19th century when curiosity and empire collided to awaken it. European adventurers, scholars, and soldiers of fortune wandered into Mesopotamia in search of something grander than the familiar tales of Rome and Greece. They followed the whispers of ancient texts that spoke of Nineveh, of Babylon, of kingdoms swallowed by time. What they found instead were broken tablets, carved in a language no one alive could read. They looked like bricks pressed with the marks of a reed, their surfaces dense with wedge-shaped impressions. The locals called them nothing more than old stones. But in the hands of archaeologists, they became the keys to a forgotten world. At first, these tablets were curiosities carried back to museums in London and Paris. They filled shelves without meaning, silent and inert. Yet the silence could not last. Scholars labored to unlock their code, tracing patterns, comparing fragments, searching for a rhythm behind the strange script. Slowly, painstakingly, cuneiform was reborn. What had been mute clay now spoke of kings' laws and gods. The words revealed the voice of Murd. Within these tablets lay the world's earliest literature, etched, not for entertainment alone, but to bind memory into permanence. The Epic of Gilgamesh emerged, telling of a king who sought immortality, of floods and divine wrath, of the struggle to understand what it means to be human. It was not merely a story, but a mirror reflecting the anxieties of an early civilization, still raw in its encounter with mortality and fate. There were other texts, too. Records of trade routes that stretched across deserts and seas, contracts that bound merchants to their goods, hymns sung in temples to gods whose names are now half-remembered. And etched among them, some of the first codes of law, where rulers sought to tame chaos with decree. These were not the scattered marks of a primitive people. They were the deliberate, ordered expressions of a society already complex, already reaching beyond survival toward the construction of meaning. The rediscovery of Sumer forced the modern world to reconsider the idea of beginnings. For here was a society that had mastered irrigation, transforming the fickle floods of the Tigris and Euphrates into a system that fed cities. Here was the invention of writing, not once, but in a system so advanced that it evolved into literature, mathematics, and astronomy. Here were cities like Uruk, whose massive walls enclosed tens of thousands of souls, making it the largest city the world had ever known at its time. Ur, with its grand ziggurat rising like a stairway to the heavens. Eridu whispered in later traditions as the first city of all. the textbooks of the West, seized upon this revelation with almost mythic intensity. Sumer was enshrined as the cradle of civilization. It's a place where humanity first stood upright in the world of culture and order. Children learned to trace the line from river valleys to empires. It's from irrigation canals to writing systems, from kings to the modern state. It became an origin story, told and retold, a reminder that our present was born from those silent bricks and shattered tablets. But beneath this celebration lay questions that no scholar could silence. Why did Sumer appear with such sudden brilliance? How could such complexity emerge in a landscape where, only centuries before, there had been no great cities? Was this truly the dawn, or had other chapters been erased, leaving only this fragment to be rediscovered? As archaeologists unearthed more tablets, the scope of the mystery widened. They found records of astronomical observations, so precise they hinted at traditions stretching back further than the Sumerians themselves. They uncovered myths that seemed to echo older tales, borrowed from cultures now lost to time. The farmers of Sumer grew wheat and barley with techniques too advanced to be explained by trial and error alone. These fragments suggested inheritance, not invention. A torch passed forward from hands we can no longer see. The fascination of the 19th and 20th centuries was not simply academic. It was almost spiritual. Western scholars looked at Sumer and saw not only the origins of cities, but the reflection of their own ambitions. Here was proof that history had a beginning, a clean and monumental starting point from which progress could be measured. In a world hungry for order, Sumer became a symbol of civilization itself. Yet symbols can mislead. By elevating Sumer to the pedestal of the first, the story of humanity's deeper past risked being obscured. The rediscovery of Sumer was not the end of mystery. It was the opening of one. For every tablet deciphered, a new silence appeared. What forces birthed such a society in a land of rivers and floods? What memory lies beneath those ruins, still hidden in the soil, still unspoken? The cradle of civilization, it seemed, might not have been a cradle at all. It might have been a continuation, a chapter that survived when others were lost, a voice that rose where others had already fallen silent. And so, with every excavation, every fragment carried from the earth, the mystery only deepened. Sumer was no longer forgotten, but perhaps it was never truly alone. The rediscovery of Sumer in the 19th century seemed to offer clarity. For the first time, there was a tangible beginning. A civilization that could be measured in bricks, tablets, and laws. But as science advanced, the neat story began to fracture. What had been celebrated as the first flicker of civilization revealed itself instead as the continuation of something deeper, something far older. The first crack appeared in the very suddenness of Sumer's emergence. Cities did not usually rise overnight, yet in Mesopotamia, vast urban centers appeared with startling completeness. Uruk, by 3500 BCE, already had monumental walls, temple complexes, and a population that may have exceeded 40,000. Writing was not found in its infancy. Scrawled in uncertain marks, but in fully developed cuneiform. Mathematics, trade systems, and astronomy appeared alongside it. Not as tentative beginnings, but as established practices. This troubled archaeologists and historians alike. For where were the earlier steps? Where were the long centuries of experimentation and trial that should have preceded such sophistication? The Sumerian story seemed to start mid-sentence, as if we had opened a book at its second or third chapter. Genetic research added to the puzzle. Studies of ancient DNA revealed that agriculture did not first bloom in Mesopotamia. The cultivation of wheat and barley had roots in the Fertile Crescent stretching back to around 10,000 BCE, long before the rise of Sumer in the Levant, in Anatolia, and across regions now covered by fields and deserts. Evidence of domesticated crops and herded animals pointed to a knowledge of food production that predated the first cities by millennia. Humanity had learned to bend nature before it had learned to carve words into clay. The story grew stranger still, the excavation of sites even older than Sumer Jericho. In the Jordan Valley, revealed stone towers and walls dating back to around 8,000 BCE. Long before Uruk's rise, Catalyak, in Anatolia flourished around 7,500 BCE.
Oh,
A dense cluster of mud brick houses painted with vibrant murals. Though it lacked monumental temples or writing, it displayed social complexity and ritual that could not easily be dismissed as primitive. These sites whispered of worlds that had organized themselves in ways different from Mesopotamia, but no less impressive. And then came Göbekli Tepe, perched on a hill in southeastern Turkey. It was unearthed not by imperial treasure hunters, but by the slow patience of modern archaeology. What the soil revealed stunned the scientific world. Massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures. Carvings of animals, lions, boars, vultures, etched with extraordinary skill. Monoliths weighing up to 16 tons, placed with precision. And all of it dated to around 9600 BCE, more than 6,000 years before the rise of Sumer. The implications were profound. Göbekli Tepe was not the work of farmers or urban societies. It was built by hunter-gatherers. People who, according to conventional wisdom, should not have had the organization, the tools, or the need to construct megalithic temples. For centuries, archaeologists had assumed that agriculture created surplus. Surplus created hierarchy, and hierarchy created monuments. But Göbekli Tepe inverted the sequence. Here was monumental architecture without cities, religion, ritual, and vision. Without the framework of agriculture, this discovery shook the foundations of history. If hunter-gatherers could raise such structures, then civilization did not simply burst forth in Sumer. Its roots reached further, into a past where humans gathered not only to survive, but to worship, to dream, and to build symbols of meaning. Göbekli Tepe suggested that belief itself, the shared imagination of gods and myths, may have been the spark that gave rise to settled life. The temple may have come before the city. The unsettling question grew sharper. If hunter-gatherers of the 10th millennium BCE could carve stone with such artistry, what else might they have achieved that left no trace? Could entire traditions have risen and fallen, swallowed by ice ages, floods, or time? Might Sumer's brilliance have been the inheritance of knowledge carried silently through generations, preserved in stories and rituals long before they were pressed into clay? The soil of Mesopotamia still clung to its title as Cradle of Civilization, but the evidence no longer allowed it to stand unchallenged. With each discovery, Jericho's tower, Catalyuk's murals, Göbekli Tepe's, megaliths, the line of progress became less clear, less linear. Civilization did not emerge at a single point. It flickered into being across landscapes and millennia, sometimes preserved, sometimes lost, sometimes reborn in unexpected places. Science had set out to explain the origins of Sumer. Instead, it uncovered shadows stretching back further than imagined. Shadows that suggested humanity's story was not one of sudden invention, but of forgotten continuities. Civilizations rising, collapsing, and rising again, each building upon fragments of the last. The narrative of history was no longer a straight road leading to Mesopotamia. It had become a labyrinth, winding into the deep past, into ages where mystery outweighs certainty. And at its center lay a haunting possibility. Perhaps the true first chapter of civilization is gone, erased not by war or conquest, but by the indifference of time itself. The search for origins does not end in Mesopotamia, nor in Anatolia, where Göbekli Tepe defied the assumptions of history. To follow the trail of civilization's forgotten beginnings is to look across oceans and continents, into ruins half buried, into myths half remembered. If Sumer was not the first, then where else does the earth whisper of lost beginnings? The sea itself holds part of the answer. During the last ice age, vast volumes of water were locked in glaciers. Coastlines stretched far beyond where they stand today. When the ice melted, oceans rose more than 100 meters, swallowing entire landscapes. Any settlements that clung to those ancient shores now lie hidden beneath waves. It's unreachable except to divers and remote instruments. Archaeologists call this the drowned shelf of human history. Somewhere in those depths, the earliest chapters may still be sleeping. One of the most controversial discoveries lies off the coast of India. In 2001, Sonar surveys revealed patterns on the seabed, structures that resembled walls, grids, and geometric alignments. Initial reports claimed evidence of stone tools and artifacts buried within sediments that, if confirmed, dated back nearly 9,000 years. The implications were staggering. A city older than Sumer, swallowed by the sea. Yet controversy clouded the find. Skeptics argued that the structures were natural formations, and the artifacts disturbed by ocean currents. The debate continues, unresolved. But the tantalizing possibility remains that along those submerged coastlines lie ruins of civilizations erased not by conquest, but by rising tides. This was not an isolated mystery. From the coast of Japan's Yonaguni to the shallow banks of the Mediterranean, divers have found stone formations that spark heated debate. Are they natural formations sculpted by geology? Or are they the remnants of walls and plazas, testimonies to ancient human presence long before our recorded histories? The ocean keeps its secrets well. What little glimpses we have are fragments, distorted by currents, contested by scholars, yet haunting in their potential. If the sea rose once, it will rise again. If it swallowed cities once, it may have swallowed many. The enigma is not confined to oceans. Far across the world, on the dry coast of Peru, lies a city as old as the earliest Mesopotamian settlements. Caral, rising from the desert plains of the Soup Valley, flourished nearly 5,000 years ago. Pyramids of stone, plazas aligned with the sky, stairways leading to ceremonial spaces, all of it built contemporaneous with the great cities of Sumer, and yet Caral seemed to appear without war, without fortifications, without conquest. Its people traded across the Andes and along the Pacific coast, weaving a network of exchange and culture as sophisticated as any river valley civilization. Caral's pyramids predate the better-known monuments of Egypt, and still, they are little more than whispers in textbooks. Overshadowed by Mesopotamia's fame, the existence of Caral raises a deeper question. If civilizations arose independently in both Mesopotamia and South America, could it be that the human impulse to organize, to build, to reach for permanence is older and more universal than we believe? Perhaps Sumer was not a singular cradle, but one among many hearths that caught fire when conditions allowed. But the mystery grows more intricate still when we turn not to ruins, but to words. Linguists trace the ancestry of languages back through time. Peeling away centuries like layers of an onion, today's thousands of tongues can be grouped into families, each branching from older roots. Indo-European stretches from Sanskrit to English, from Latin to Persian. Afro-Asiatic ties together Arabic, Hebrew, and ancient Egyptian. Yet as scholars pursue these roots deeper, patterns begin to converge. Some have suggested the existence of proto-languages, ancestral tongues spoken before writing, possibly as far back as the Late Ice Age. The controversial Nostratic hypothesis even hints that many of the world's language families may spring from a common origin more than 12,000 years ago, if true. This suggests something profound, that before cities, before Sumer or Egypt, there were vast human networks capable of sharing, remembering, and transmitting culture across generations. Words become the vessel of continuity, carrying knowledge and memory from one age into the next. Writing preserves, but language invents, and proto-languages may be the faint echo of civilizations too fleeting or too fragile to leave stone monuments. Yet enduring in the rhythms of human speech, the myths of the world to preserve fragments of memory. For in almost every culture, scattered across continents, the same stories are told. Stories of floods that drowned entire peoples. Stories of golden ages when gods walked among mortals. Stories of lands lost beneath the waves. The Sumerians themselves wrote of a great flood, a cataclysm that swept away cities, leaving only a chosen few to rebuild. The Epic of Gilgamesh records Utnapishtim, a survivor who built an ark at the command of the gods, a tale older but strikingly similar to the biblical story of Noah, across the seas in India. Ancient texts speak of Manu, who was warned by a divine fish of a deluge that would destroy the world. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha survived a flood sent by Zeus. In the Americas, the Maya and Aztec remembered cycles of worlds destroyed by water. Are these simply archetypal myths, products of the human imagination repeating itself across cultures? Or are they cultural memories, distorted by time, of real events, the rising seas that ended the Ice Age, drowning coastlines and scattering peoples? When science maps the abrupt meltwater pulses that flooded the oceans around 10,000 BCE, the timelines echoed too closely to ignore. What was remembered as divine wrath may have been the memory of rivers, swallowing valleys, of coasts, disappearing beneath waves, of migrations forced by waters that would not stop rising. And then there is Atlantis, the most famous of all lost worlds. Written by Plato in the 4th century BCE, Atlantis was described as a great island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophe, historians debate whether Plato invented the tale as allegory or whether it echoed an older memory passed down through tradition. The name itself may not matter. What matters is the persistence of the story. A memory of a great civilization erased. A warning that nothing endures. Science cannot prove Atlantis. It cannot excavate myth in the same way it excavates stone. But science can recognize that myths often preserve kernels of truth. The flood myths, repeated across the globe, align with geological evidence of sudden sea level rise. The Golden Ages, when interpreted carefully, may preserve faint recollections of earlier human florescences, cultures that thrived and fell before the recognized dawn. The deeper investigation does not yield certainty. Instead, it multiplies the mysteries. Submerged ruins that may or may not be human-made. Civilizations like Caral, hidden in plain sight, rewriting the assumption of singular origins. Languages that reach into the deep past, carrying echoes of worlds without writing. Myths that bind memory and geology together. Hinting that the human story is older than the monuments we preserve. The question grows larger with every discovery. How many times has civilization begun? How many times has it been lost? The scientific narrative that once seemed simple, that cities, writing, and states emerged once in Mesopotamia and spread outward, no longer holds its shape. Instead, we glimpse a tapestry woven from many threads, some bright, some faint, some broken. Civilization may not have been a miracle that occurred in one place, but a pattern repeated, forgotten, and rediscovered. Each fragment deepens the sense of awe. Humanity is not only the product of the last 5,000 years. Humanity is the heir to cycles of creation and loss, of memory and forgetting. We live in the shadow of ruins we do not yet know exist. In the echo of languages that no longer have speakers, in the myths that once were lived realities, the investigation stretches on. Across oceans, across deserts, across the very edges of what science can measure, it leaves us with a haunting realization. The story of civilization is not a line, nor a single beginning. It is a palimpsest, written and rewritten across ages. Each new chapter erasing but never fully destroying what came before. And if so much remains hidden, then perhaps we have not yet even glimpsed the true first page. The story of civilization is a fragile one. It rests on ruins that survived by chance, on artifacts that escaped fire and flood, on timelines pieced together from fragments. For every tablet preserved, countless others dissolved in rain. For every city remembered, others may have vanished beneath the sea. The gaps in the record are vast, and within those gaps, the greatest mysteries hide. In recent decades, one of the most dramatic mysteries emerged not from stones or languages, but from the Earth's own climate. Around 12,800 years ago, the planet shuddered through a sudden reversal. The world had been warming at the end of the last ice age. Glaciers were retreating, seas were rising, forests spreading. Then, in an instant measured by geology but felt as catastrophe, the warmth collapsed. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere plummeted. Glaciers surged forward once again. Deserts expanded. Species vanished. This epoch became known as the Younger Dryas. For more than 1,000 years, the world remained locked in this unexpected cold, until warmth returned just as abruptly. What triggered such a violent swing has been debated fiercely. Some scientists point to the collapse of glacial meltwater into the North Atlantic, disrupting ocean currents that distribute heat across the planet. Others suggest shifts in atmospheric circulation or volcanic eruptions. But a bolder hypothesis has stirred intense controversy. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that fragments of a comet, or perhaps a swarm of them, struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago. The evidence, its supporters claim, lies in thin layers of soil found across multiple continents. These layers contain peaks of platinum, microspherules, formed by extreme heat, and nanodomins, tiny crystalline structures forged under pressures found in cosmic collisions. Some layers also carry signs of widespread fires, as though vast regions of the planet burned in the aftermath. If true, the implications are staggering. A cosmic visitor could have struck the Earth at the very moment when human societies were beginning to experiment with settled life. It could have plunged the planet back into ice, forcing survivors into migrations, shattering cultures before they had a chance to take root. Civilizations that might have been erased, leaving behind only scattered myths of destruction. Skeptics argue that the evidence is inconclusive, that natural processes can account for the anomalies. Yet the debate itself highlights how precarious our understanding of the past remains. The climate shifts of the Younger Dryas are undeniable. Whatever their cause, the consequences were immense. Seas rose with the eventual warming swallowing coastlines. Vast tracts of land that had been habitable became ocean floor. If human societies flourished along those ancient coasts, their ruins now lie beyond reach. The mathematics of sea level rise are merciless. Since the end of the last ice age, the oceans have risen more than 100 meters. Entire continental shelves were submerged, erasing landscapes larger than modern nations. Imagine cities, harbors, and temples now hidden beneath the waves. Their stones softened by tides, their memory erased, except in stories of floods and lost worlds. What archaeologists see on dry land is but the fraction that survived above the tide line. This realization casts Sumer in a new light. If the world before the Younger Dryas held organized societies, then the cities of Mesopotamia may not have been unprecedented inventions, but inheritances. Survivors may have carried fragments of memory through the ages in tools, in stories, in rituals, until conditions allowed them to rebuild. The brilliance of Sumer may have been the spark of continuity, not creation ex nihilo. The suspicion is not without support. The sudden sophistication of Sumerian writing, mathematics, and astronomy hints at traditions older than their ruins. Their myths speak of floods and ages before the present. Their gods arrived not as inventions of a people struggling from the wilderness, but as figures of power already ancient, bringing order to chaos. These echoes suggest that the knowledge of Sumer may have been an inheritance of survivors, polished and expanded, but not entirely new. Yet archaeology resists such rewriting. The discipline has built its narrative upon stratigraphy, upon sequences of layers carefully excavated, upon dates fixed by carbon and context. To leap beyond the evidence is to risk speculation, and speculation threatens the fragile authority of science. The accepted timeline of civilization is a delicate framework. Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, each fitted into a neat chronology, each used to teach the progress of humanity. To admit that something vast may have preceded them unsettles the foundation of the entire story. But history is not obliged to be simple. The earth is not obliged to preserve every chapter. What is found in the soil is but a fraction of what once was. If a comet fell, if seas rose, if cultures vanished without stone monuments, then the record would be broken beyond repair. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's only the silence of time. The mystery deepens when one considers how human memory works. Myths of floods, golden ages, and lost lands may be cultural fossils of these events. They survive not in brick or bone, but in narrative. The Younger Dryas may be remembered not in the strata alone, but in the legends of destruction handed down through millennia. To dismiss them as mere invention is to underestimate the resilience of human memory across ages. The resistance of archaeology is, in part, understandable. To open the door to lost civilizations risks speculation without boundary, a collapse into fantasy. Yet to deny the possibility entirely is to ignore the evidence of geology, genetics and myth converging on the same haunting conclusion. Civilization may not be 5,000 years old. Its roots may reach twice, even 3 times as far, perhaps further still. The story of Sumer, once thought complete, now appears as the surface of something deeper. The sudden rise of cities, the abrupt mastery of writing, the precision of astronomy, all these may be signs not of invention, but of recovery. The human story may not be of creation, but of survival. The Younger Dryas stands as a turning point, a cosmic shadow cast over humanity's earliest attempts at permanence. Whatever its cause, comet, meltwater, or shifting winds, its impact was undeniable. It erased landscapes, tested endurance, and scattered memory. And in its wake, centuries later, arose the cities we call the first. But if these were not truly the first, then where are their forgotten ancestors? Beneath the waves? Buried beneath ice? Preserved only in myth? The mystery of origins has not been solved. It has only grown deeper, more fragile, more wondrous. Humanity's true beginning may lie in ruins we have yet to find, in evidence we cannot reach, in memories we no longer recognize. The question remains, lingering like an echo. Did Sumer create civilization, or did it remember? The fragments of evidence scattered across ruins, myths, and geology invite interpretation. Science strives to bind them into order, but the deeper the investigation goes, the more the narrative frays. Sumer, once thought to be the unquestioned cradle, now seems less like a beginning than a continuation. What rises from this uncertainty are theories, some cautious, some daring, that attempt to explain how civilization truly began. The mainstream view remains steady. Civilization, it argues, was not the sudden gift of the gods, nor the remnant of some forgotten empire. It was the product of gradual steps, each built upon the last. Agriculture spread across the Fertile Crescent. Settlements grew into villages. Villages swelled into cities. Ideas diffused through trade and migration. Mesopotamia, in this telling, was simply the place where those threads converged most powerfully. Uruk's walls, Sumer's writing, and its astronomy were not anomalies, but the outcome of millennia of incremental progress. The apparent suddenness is only the illusion created by gaps in the archaeological record. Yet even within this framework, unease lingers. For the gaps are wide, and the leaps from small settlements to sprawling cities, from tokens of trade to complex writing systems, remain abrupt. To account for these leaps, alternative theories have gained attention. One such theory is that of civilization resets. The Earth's climate has never been stable. Ice ages advance and retreat. Seas rise and fall. Volcanic eruptions blot out the sun. Each cataclysm leaves scars not only on landscapes but on memory. If humans had organized into complex societies before the Younger Dryas, they may have been swept away, their remnants scattered, their achievements forgotten. What followed was not the first rise, but the second, or perhaps the third. Civilization may not be linear, but cyclical. A flame kindled and extinguished again and again across deep time. The evidence is circumstantial, yet compelling. Myths of floods align with geological records of rising seas. Genetic studies show bottlenecks, moments where human populations shrank dramatically, suggesting that whole groups may have been wiped out by famine, climate shifts, or catastrophe. And then there are the tantalizing hints from sites like Göbekli Tepe, which appear not as the beginning of something new, but as a legacy inexplicable by the tools of their age. Another speculation turns to the idea of lost. Societies advanced beyond their age. Not advanced in the sense of machines or modern technology, but in knowledge of astronomy, of agriculture, of engineering. A society able to chart the stars with precision, to move megaliths, to organize labor on a scale unexpected of hunter-gatherers. When the seas rose and the ice melted, these societies may have disappeared. Survivors scattered into smaller groups carried fragments of this knowledge forward. When they rebuilt, those fragments appeared as sudden brilliance. Sumer, in this vision, was the heir to an inheritance too ancient to trace. Comparative mythology lends an eerie resonance to this view. Across cultures, gods are described as descending from the heavens to grant humanity the gifts of knowledge. In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki taught kings the laws of civilization. In Egypt, Thoth bestowed writing. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl brought agriculture and learning. To modernize, these are myths, symbolic tales of culture's dawn. But some have speculated whether they are memories, dim recollections of encounters with survivors of lost societies, so advanced relative to scattered tribes that they appeared godlike. Knowledge received rather than invented, then mythologized as divine descent. Genetic evidence adds another dimension. Studies of ancient DNA reveal surprising connections across distant populations, suggesting shared ancestors that predate recorded history. These bottlenecks and dispersals point to episodes where humanity was reduced to small numbers, surviving through crises before expanding again. Such contractions could explain both the loss of memory and the persistence of shared myths. When only fragments of culture survive, they spread widely, shaping stories across continents. Cautious speculation turns the question inward. What if civilization is not a single trajectory, but a rhythm? Humanity rises, builds, and organizes. Catastrophe strikes. Memory fractures. Survivors rebuild, carrying whispers of what came before. To each new beginning, the past is both guide and ghost. The cycles may be longer than recorded history, stretching beyond the reach of archaeology, into ages when the world was colder, seas lower, and landscapes now hidden were alive with human presence. This cyclical vision unsettles the notion of progress. For if civilizations rise and fall in cycles, then what we call advancement may not be unique to us. It may be part of a pattern as old as humanity itself. The ruins we know, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, may be only the most recent survivors. The visible peaks of mountains whose bases lie drowned in time, mainstream archaeology resists such ideas. Not out of malice, but from caution. To rewrite history on speculation risks losing the fragile framework that evidence has allowed. But the fragments that resist explanation demand humility. The sudden completeness of Sumerian culture, the precision of megaliths built before farming, the universality of myths recounting floods and golden ages. They do not prove lost civilizations. They whisper of possibilities that science cannot yet dismiss. Theories alone cannot solve the mystery. Yet they illuminate a profound truth. The story of humanity is larger than the ruins we have uncovered. It may be deeper than the timeline we accept. Whether civilization began once or many times, whether knowledge was created or inherited, the evidence points to a past richer, stranger, and more fragile than we imagined. To look upon the ziggurats of Sumer, the pyramids of Cairo, or the stones of Göbekli Tepe is to confront not only human ingenuity, but human amnesia. We are a species that builds monuments to memory, yet forgets more than it remembers. We are heirs not only to recorded history, but to forgotten ages, erased by flood and fire. Preserved only in myth and speculation, the theories vary diffusion, reset, inheritance, cycles, but together they form a haunting chorus. A reminder that civilization may not be a line drawn from past to present, but a circle traced across time, repeating, breaking, and renewing. And within that circle lies the unanswered question. If we are not the first, then who were the ones before? The search for humanity's true beginnings has always been fragile, carried on the edge of silence. For centuries, it relied on chance discoveries, a buried tablet in a farmer's field, a broken statue found in shifting sands. But today, science equips us with instruments that can probe where shovels cannot reach. It can see beneath soil, beneath oceans, even beneath the code of life itself. The mystery of civilization's origins now rests not only in the hands of archaeologists with brushes, but in satellites, sensors, and algorithms that extend human vision into realms the ancients could never have imagined. Ground penetrating. Radar has become one of archaeology's most revealing tools. By sending pulses into the earth and measuring their echoes, it draws images of what lies hidden beneath the surface. Without turning a single stone, researchers can trace the outlines of ancient walls, roads, and forgotten structures. Fields once thought empty suddenly reveal the ghosts of buried cities. In Mesopotamia, radar surveys have uncovered settlement patterns stretching far beyond excavated sites, suggesting that the Cradle of Civilization was not a cluster of isolated city-states, but part of a vast, interconnected web. In the deserts of Peru, radar has traced foundations beneath the sand, mapping urban landscapes older than written history. Each scan brings the possibility that what we thought was wilderness may have been home to thousands. From above, satellites now serve as archaeologists orbiting the planet. Their sensors, tuned to infrared and spectral imaging, detect subtle differences in vegetation and soil that betray the presence of buried ruins. In Egypt, satellite imagery has revealed entire cities hidden beneath modern farmland. In the Amazon, deforestation has exposed vast geometric earthworks, circles, lines, and plazas carved into the soil, signs of a civilization once thought impossible in such a landscape. Across the Middle East, faint outlines of forgotten settlements emerge from space. Cities erased by time, but still written faintly into the earth. What once required decades of excavation can now be glimpsed from orbit, hinting that our planet is still filled with invisible ruins waiting to be seen beneath the oceans. Technology is beginning to uncover what the rising seas of the past destroyed. Sonar mapping, once developed for submarines, now sweeps the seafloor, revealing canyons, terraces, and structures drowned since the Ice Age. Off the coast of India, sonar grids in the Gulf of Kamhat continue to reveal enigmatic formations that challenge interpretation. Off Japan's Yonaguni coast, divers swim among step terraces and walls that may be geological or may be the remnants of human construction lost when the seas rose. Each discovery rekindles the question: how many coastlines once held civilizations erased by the tide? With less than 20% of the ocean floor mapped in detail, the vast majority of the drowned world remains uncharted, holding secrets no less profound than those found in deserts or valleys. The quest to fix history and time relies on dating methods, and here science has refined its tools. Radiocarbon dating, once limited by broad margins of error, has grown more precise with calibration against tree rings and ice cores. Optically stimulated luminescence now allows archaeologists to date the last time grains of sand were exposed to sunlight, reaching deeper into prehistory. These methods place monuments like Göbekli Tepe firmly at the end of the Ice Age, confirming that its stones were raised thousands of years before Sumer. They fix the age of Jericho's towers, of Çatalhöyük's murals, providing a scaffolding of time on which to reconstruct forgotten worlds. Yet each refinement brings its own shock, confirming that human ingenuity was flowering in ages long thought barren of complexity. Science has not stopped at stones. It has turned inward into the human body itself, into the code written in DNA. The Human Genome Project and the sequencing of ancient remains have drawn maps of migration stretching back tens of thousands of years. They reveal how people moved out of Africa, into Europe, across Asia, and finally into the Americas. They reveal mixing and divergence, survival through bottlenecks, the shadow of catastrophes that reduced humanity to small numbers. Within our genomes are signatures of resilience and loss, hints of ancestors who lived through events never recorded. The genetic record suggests that humanity's capacity for organization and culture is far older than its first cities. It implies that knowledge could have survived across generations without stone or clay. It's carried in memory and blood. At Göbekli Tepe, science continues to dig, but with patience tempered by precision. Excavations have uncovered only a fraction of the site. Beneath what has been revealed lie countless more enclosures still untouched. Each season brings new carvings, new alignments, new mysteries. Radar shows layers yet to be uncovered, suggesting that the hill holds not a single monument but a complex spanning centuries, perhaps millennia. Here, archaeologists and geneticists collaborate, analyzing residues of grain, traces of animals, fragments of bone, piecing together the lives of those who built megaliths before cities. The work proceeds slowly, not from lack of urgency, but from the weight of responsibility. To rush is to risk losing details that may change the story of humanity itself. Elsewhere in Anatolia, other sites are being excavated that may push the timeline of civilization further still. Karahan Tepe, with its carved pillars and enigmatic chambers, suggests that Göbekli Tepe was not alone, but part of a broader culture. Navali Kori, though now lost beneath dam waters, revealed architectural traditions that may connect to the same ancient horizon. Each site is a piece of a puzzle we do not yet know how to assemble, a puzzle that seems to grow larger with every discovery. Into this expanding field of evidence steps a new force: artificial intelligence. Vast archives of data, from satellite images to museum catalogs, lie beyond the capacity of human eyes to fully analyze. AI algorithms can now scan satellite images at scales impossible for teams of archaeologists, identifying patterns invisible to human sight. They can cluster fragments of pottery scattered across continents, tracing trade networks in ways never before possible. They can model genetic variation across populations, simulating ancient migrations with breathtaking resolution. In time, AI may be the tool that connects the scattered pieces of the puzzle, revealing continuities and cycles hidden in the data. Yet even with these tools, the mystery remains profound. For every site uncovered, for every genetic lineage mapped, new questions arise. The precision of science confirms that humans built monuments before farming, that they settled coastlines now lost to the sea, that they survived catastrophes that nearly erased them. But it cannot yet explain why these leaps occurred, or how memory carried fragments of knowledge through ages of silence. The tools of modern science illuminate shadows, but they do not erase them. They sharpen the mystery, refining its edges, making its unanswered questions more visible. They reveal a humanity older, more complex, and more resilient than we imagined. They remind us that civilization is not a sudden gift of the last 5,000 years, but the outcome of cycles, inheritances, and forgotten ages still waiting to be uncovered. The search is ongoing. Archaeologists continue to scan deserts, oceans, and valleys. Geneticists continue to read the code of our ancestors. Satellites continue to sweep the Earth from above, and AI waits to connect the fragments into patterns we have yet to see. We stand at the edge of revelation, but also at the edge of humility. For even with all our instruments, the past may never fully surrender its secrets. Civilization's story is not finished. It is still being written, not only in the soil and stone of excavation, but in the data streams of satellites, the sequences of genomes, and the models of machines. We are participants in the ongoing investigation of our own forgotten beginnings. And with each tool, each discovery, the question deepens. Were we the first, or are we only the latest? Civilization is often described as a structure, a building raised from nothing, its foundations clear and its walls standing firm. Yet, when examined closely, it is less a structure than a palimpsest, a manuscript written and rewritten over time. Each age inscribes its story upon the remains of what came before, erasing but never fully destroying the traces beneath. What we call beginnings may simply be continuations. Fragments of older scripts faintly visible beneath the ink of the present. Sumer, celebrated as the cradle of civilization, appears less like a birth and more like a rediscovery. Its ziggurats rose not in a vacuum, but upon landscapes already shaped by human memory. Its cuneiform did not emerge from silence, but from long traditions of tokens, tallies, and oral histories now invisible to us. Its myths do not sound like inventions of a people seeing the world for the first time, but echoes of older narratives, passed down through countless voices, reshaped into new forms. To call Sumer the beginning may be convenient, but it may also be misleading. What it truly represents is a survival, the moment where human ingenuity managed to endure catastrophe and inscribe itself into permanence. This realization brings with it a profound humility. Humanity longs to know where it came from, to point to a place and say with certainty, "This is where it began." It is a need born not only of curiosity, but of identity. If we are to understand ourselves, we wish to trace the thread to its first knot. Yet the deeper the search goes, the more elusive that knot becomes. The ruins uncovered suggest that we are not simply a young species of builders, but perhaps the survivors of forgotten worlds, heirs to legacies erased by time. We are less the authors of the first chapter, and more the custodians of a story already long underway. The fragility of memory is central to this mystery. Consider the cities of today, vast metropolises of glass and steel, lit by electricity and mapped in networks of data. Imagine their fate in 10,000 years. If left untended, concrete crumbles, steel corrodes, glass shatters into dust. Forests reclaim what was built, rivers carve new courses, deserts spread, and seas rise. In millennia, even the mightiest skyscraper would be reduced to fragments, indistinguishable from rock. Digital archives would dissolve into silence as magnetic domains fail, as silicon chips decay. If future archaeologists were to uncover only scattered ruins of our world, what story would they tell? Would they believe ours was the first civilization, or only one of many? This thought draws us closer to the ancients. The ruins of Sumer survived because they were baked clay, resistant to time. But what of those who built in wood, or who settled on coasts, drowned by the sea? Their memory may be gone, not because they were less advanced, but because their works were less durable. Archaeology privileges stone, clay, and bone. Yet much of human culture was made of fiber, of song, of story, all things fragile to time. If civilization is measured only in what survives, then we are blind to most of what was. And so the true cradle of civilization may not be a place. It may not be the banks of the Tigris, nor the valleys of Anatolia, nor the drowned shelves of lost coastlines. The cradle may instead be a question, an unending search for origins that compels humanity to look deeper, to uncover, to imagine. Each discovery reshapes the story, but never ends it. Each ruin whispers not only of what was, but of what was lost. In this way, the quest itself becomes part of civilization's identity. To build cities is one expression of humanity. To wonder about their beginnings is another. The ruins of Sumer do more than testify to laws, kings, and gods. They remind us that even the earliest recorded civilizations were already searching backward, already telling stories of floods, golden ages, and divine teachers. Their longing mirrors our own, bridging thousands of years. Humanity has always sought its roots, even as it builds new branches. Perhaps this is the true continuity. Not the unbroken line of monuments, but the unbroken desire to remember. Myths of Atlantis, of lost ages, of gods descending from the sky. These are not proof of forgotten civilizations, but they are proof of humanity's refusal to accept silence. When faced with gaps in memory, the human mind fills them with story. Some stories later prove to be true, confirmed by archaeology or geology. Others remain speculation. But all are driven by the same force, the need to know who we are, by knowing where we began. And if civilization is cyclical, if ages rise and fall, then our own world stands as both a testament and a warning. The fragility that erases others will one day erase us as well. Unless preserved with care, our cities will fall to the same silence that swallowed Göbekli Tepe, Caral, and Uruk. Future generations, if they exist, may wonder at fragments of satellites buried in silt, at shards of plastic turned to stone, at faint imprints of cities beneath forest canopies. They may ask the same questions we ask of Sumer. Were these the first? Or were they inheritors of something older? In this light, the study of lost civilizations becomes more than historical curiosity. It becomes a reflection on impermanence. No monument, however great, endures forever. No city, however powerful, escapes time. To know that others may have been lost before us is to recognize our own vulnerability. Civilization is not permanent. It is a fragile bloom, nurtured against chaos, always at risk of being erased. Its survival depends not only on its builders, but on its memory-keepers, and yet within this fragility lies wonder. For even erased civilizations leave shadows, a myth of a flood, a carving of an animal no longer found, a genetic trace passed down through countless generations. These fragments remind us that nothing is ever wholly lost. Memory lingers, reshaped, retold, carried forward until rediscovered. Civilization is not a monument in stone, but a continuum of memory layered upon memory, fragile yet enduring through its very persistence in human longing. The ziggurats of Sumer stand as reminders not of the first city, but of humanity's determination to endure, to leave a trace. Göbekli Tepe stands as a reminder that even hunter-gatherers could carve meaning into stone, reaching for permanence in an impermanent world. Our own skyscrapers and satellites stand as the latest expression of the same impulse. All are part of the same story, written not once, but many times. Across ages and landscapes, perhaps the true cradle of civilization is not a single place, nor a single time. It is a question that recurs wherever humans gather, wherever they build, wherever they look at their creations and ask, where did this begin? That question has driven excavation, science, and myth. It has driven us to peer into the past, and even into the stars, searching for origins that may lie beyond the earth itself. And so the story closes where it began.
Art.
Not with certainty, but with wonder. Civilization is not a line traced from Sumer to the present. It is a constellation of moments, of rises and falls, of memory and forgetting. Its true cradle is hidden not only beneath ruins and seas, but within the human need to ask again and again who we are and where we come from. The search is endless, but perhaps that is its purpose. To search is to remember that we are fragile and yet enduring. To search is to recognize that we are both the builders of cities and the survivors of forgotten worlds. To search is to see civilization not as a finished story, but as a question written across time, compelling us onward. The cradle of civilization is not a city of bricks, nor a temple of stone. It is the question itself. And as long as humanity continues to ask it, civilization will never be lost.